Go grab your sunglasses right now. Seriously, I'll wait. Whatever brand is printed on the arm, Ray-Ban, Oakley, Prada, Versace, Chanel, Burberry, yes, there's a very good chance the same company made all of them. Not just the frames, the store you bought them in, the eye exam you had before that, and in millions of cases, the insurance plan that paid for it. But here's the part nobody tells you. The version of this story floating around the internet, the one that says a single Italian company owns 80% of the eyewear market, is wrong. The real story is stranger than that, and honestly, a lot more impressive. Because what this company actually built isn't a monopoly on glasses. It's something much smarter and much harder to escape. So stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to understand why a pair of sunglasses that costs maybe $30 to make sells for $300, why one brand you definitely own was deliberately pulled off store shelves, and why the man who built this whole thing spent part of his childhood in an orphanage. Remember that last one? It comes back. Let's start in a town you've never heard of, Agordo, Italy. Population about 4,000, tucked into the Dolomite Mountains, cold, small, and for some reason completely obsessed with eyeglasses. For decades, this little valley was the center of Italian eyewear manufacturing. Tiny workshops, family businesses, guys bending metal in garages. And in 1961, a 26-year-old named Leonardo Del Vecchio moved there and opened one of those workshops. Now Del Vecchio's backstory is genuinely rough. His father died before he was born. His mother had 5 kids and no money, and when he was 7, she sent him to an orphanage in Milan, run by an organization called the Martinet. Not because she didn't want him, because she couldn't feed him. He grew up there, learned metal engraving as a teenage apprentice, lost part of a finger doing it, and eventually decided he was done making parts for other people. So he started his own shop, and here's the thing. Luxottica did not start as a glasses company. It started as a company that made pieces of glasses, screws, hinges, little metal components he'd sell to the actual frame makers. That was it. That was the entire business. Which raises the obvious question, how do you go from making hinges in a mountain village to owning basically every sunglasses brand your favorite celebrity has ever worn? The answer is that Del Vecchio figured out something about this industry that almost nobody else did, and he figured it out roughly 40 years before his competitors caught up. And it's not what you think. It's not design. It's not marketing. It's not even quality. By 1967, he was selling complete frames under his own name. By 1971, he had a full collection. Fine, normal growth. But then in 1974, he did something weird. He bought a distributor, a company called Scaroni, whose entire job was getting glasses from factories into shops. Everyone else in Agordo thought this was insane. You make the product, you sell it to a distributor, the distributor deals with the annoying part. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Del Vecchio's take was different. He looked at the chain, the factory, distributor, store, customer, and realized every single link in that chain takes a cut. And if you own more links, you keep more cuts. That's the whole idea. That's the secret. It's not glamorous at all. It's just a guy who decided he wanted to own the entire hallway instead of one room. So he kept going. Foreign subsidiaries in the 80s. Then in 1988, he signed a licensing deal with Giorgio Armani, and that's when things really changed, because Del Vecchio understood something about fashion houses that they hadn't fully admitted to themselves. Armani doesn't actually want to build eyewear factories. Armani wants the logo on a product, a cut of the money, and zero manufacturing headaches. So Luxottica basically said, cool, we'll make them, we'll distribute them, you get a check. And once one luxury house said yes, they all did. Prada, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, Chanel, Ralph Lauren, Burberry, Tiffany, Bulgari, Coach, Michael Kors, Miu Miu, dozens of these names, all competing viciously with each other on the runway, all quietly walking into the same Italian supplier to get their eyewear made. But the wildest chapter is still coming, because in the 90s, Del Vecchio stopped buying licenses and started buying entire companies. In 1995, Luxottica bought an American business called the United States Shoe Corporation for well over $1 billion. Shoes. Why would an Italian eyewear manufacturer buy a shoe conglomerate? Because buried inside that company was a retail chain called LensCrafters. Del Vecchio offloaded the shoe business almost immediately and kept the glasses stores. He didn't want the company, he wanted the doors. Then came 1999, and this one is a genuine genuine masterclass. Ray-Ban. You know Ray-Ban. Aviators, Wayfarers, Top Gun, every cool person in every movie for the last 70 years. In 1999, that brand belonged to Bausch & Lomb, and it was in trouble. Not in the sense that people hated it, in the sense that it had been squeezed so hard for volume that you could buy Ray-Bans at a gas station for around 20 bucks, and the quality had slid to match. The most iconic sunglasses on earth had turned into a checkout counter impulse buy. Luxottica bought it for a reported $640 million. And then, they did the single most counterintuitive thing you can possibly do with a brand you just spent that much money on. They pulled it off the shelves, out of the gas stations, out of the discount racks, out of thousands of low-end outlets. Sales dropped on purpose for a while. They reworked the product, tightened up who was even allowed to sell it, and brought it back at a completely different price point, well over $100, and climbing from there. And it worked. Ray-Ban went from a dying discount brand back to the biggest name in sunglasses in the world. Sometimes the fastest way to make something valuable is to make it hard to buy. Now, I promised you an acquisition that reads less like a business deal and more like a hostage negotiation. Here it is. In 2001, Luxottica bought Sunglass Hut. If you've ever walked through an American mall, you've walked past one. Hundreds and hundreds of stores whose entire purpose is selling premium sunglasses. And Luxottica now owned all of them, while also owning or licensing most of the brands sitting inside them. Which brings us to Oakley. Oakley was one of the last big independents left. A wildly successful California brand built by a guy named Jim Jannard, who started out selling motorcycle grips out of the trunk of his car. And in the early 2000s, Oakley and Luxottica got into a dispute over pricing. What happened next is one of the most repeated stories in the industry, so let me be careful with it. As it's commonly reported, Luxottica reduced or threatened to reduce Oakley's presence in its stores. Whatever the exact mechanics were, the market reaction was brutal. Oakley's stock took a severe hit because investors understood instantly that getting cut off from that retail network was close to a death sentence. And in 2007, Luxottica bought Oakley outright. Reported price, around $2.1 billion. Think about what that actually means structurally. If you control the shelf, you control who gets to exist on it. That's not a monopoly on making glasses. That's something else. That's a choke point. And that's still not the fourth leg. I told you there was a fourth leg, and it's the one almost nobody brings up. In 2004, Luxottica bought Cole National, which brought in Pearl Vision, Sears Optical, and Target Optical. More doors. Fine. But Cole National also came with something called EyeMed, a vision insurance business covering tens of millions of Americans. Sit with that for a second. The same corporate parent can be involved in the insurance plan that covers your eye exam, the store where you get that exam, the frame you pick off the wall, the brand name printed on that frame, the supplier that made it, and eventually the lens that goes into it. Design, manufacturing, distribution, retail, and insurance. 5 stages of the same transaction. And this is exactly where I have to correct the internet, because this is where the story usually goes completely off the rails. You've probably seen the claim that this company owns 80% of the eyewear market. It doesn't. Globally, eyewear is enormous and genuinely fragmented. Huge volumes of frames come out of China. There are thousands of independent manufacturers, and vast parts of the world buy glasses that have nothing to do with any of this. Measured by global revenue, the real share is a fraction of that 80% figure. So why does the myth stick so hard? Because in the specific slice of the market that most people in wealthy countries actually experience, premium branded sunglasses, designer eyewear, mall-based optical retail, the concentration is very real and very high. When you walk into a store and feel like you've got 12 brands to choose from, you often have far fewer actual suppliers than the logos suggest. It isn't 80% of the world, it's closer to 80% of your options in that store on that day. Those are completely different claims, and the second one is the interesting one. Then in 2018, the whole thing got bigger anyway. Luxottica merged with Essilor, the French giant that dominates the other half of the product. The actual lenses, including the progressive lens technology used worldwide. The combined company, Essilor Luxottica, was valued in the tens of billions, frames and lenses under one roof. In 2021, they added Grand Vision, a European retail chain with thousands more stores and regulators forced them to sell off pieces of it before approving the deal. And Leonardo Del Vecchio, the kid from the orphanage, died in 2022 as one of the richest people in Italy, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $27 billion. So what does all of this mean for you standing in a store holding a $300 pair of sunglasses? It means the price you're looking at isn't really the cost of the object. Industry estimates for what a pair of premium frames costs to actually produce tend to land somewhere in the tens of dollars, and the retail price is a multiple of that, many times over. That gap doesn't exist because the plastic is magic. It exists because brand licensing, marketing, distribution, retail rent, and margin are all being collected along the way. And when one company owns most of those stages, there's very little pressure from anywhere to push the number back down, which is exactly why the last 15 years have been so interesting. Warby Parker was founded in 2010 by people who looked at this structure and basically said, what if we just sold glasses online for $95? Zenni and a wave of cheap online sellers went even lower, and the honest answer is that it worked, partially. Prices at the bottom end collapsed, but the giant didn't shrink. It adapted, bought online sellers of its own, and kept its grip on the premium end where the money actually is. And now there's the part that makes this story genuinely unfinished. Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. Cameras, speakers, and an AI assistant built into a frame design that's been around since the 50s. Meta has taken a stake in Essilor Luxottica and keeps deepening the partnership. The company also picked up Supreme in 2024, which is a sentence I truly did not expect to write about a hinge manufacturer from a mountain village. Because that's the thing about this whole story. It was never really about sunglasses. It was about one guy from an orphanage in Milan realizing that whoever controls the path between a product and a customer is more powerful than whoever makes the product. He spent 60 years buying up that path, one link at a time, until picking a brand stopped meaning what you think it means. So next time somebody tells you they'd never wear that brand, they only wear this one. Go check who makes both. If this rearranged something in your brain, hit subscribe, because I'm doing more of these on the companies quietly running things behind the logos you trust. And if you want to see this exact playbook run on something even weirder, watch this one next.